This video is an accompaniment to the previous one. There may be a little bit of repetition of some of the stuff that's in the other video, but in particular in this video I wanted to look not so much at the more specifically industry in terms of Ubisoft, but more particularly about franchises and genre. Okay, so our key theories here again, here's McGulch, as I said, cultural industry companies try to minimize risk and maximize audience through vertical and horizontal integration. We've talked about that. What I want to talk about here mainly is the formatting of cultural products, the use of genres and franchises, rather than the other two. And this is where Steve Neal comes in with genre theory. The idea that genres may be dominated by repetition, but they're also marked by difference, variation, and change. That genres change, develop, and vary over time, but they borrow and overlap from one another. And that each genres exist within a specific economic, institution, industrial context. So it ties in with this. Genres are part of companies trying to minimize risk and maximize audience. Audiences like genres because they like to know what they're going to get. Video games are expensive. If you're paying 50 quid for a new video game, you want to know that you're going to get something you like. As video games become more and more expensive to make, to develop a game, the price of video games has gone up and up and up. Video games are more expensive now than they used to be, even taking inflation into account. So, you like known properties. Audiences like to know what they're going to get. This is why franchises, sequels, reboots, remakes, etc. are so important across different kinds of media, not just video games, but particularly in video games. Which means that there are fewer original titles available, because they're a big risk. Look what happened to that new Cyberpunk game. It took years and years and years to be developed. They rushed it out and it was a mess. I was very excited about that game. I bought it, hated it. It kept crashing, it was full of bugs, it was a nightmare. So, you rely on things, you stick to things you know. The industry knows this. So what they do is they just keep tweaking the same old platforms, the same old games, the same old content, and rehashing it, because they know it works. Right, so, just to remind you, we're talking about AAA franchise games here. As I said, those are the ones that are the most generic. They're the ones that fit into the genres the most. They are very postmodern. It's pastiches, it's remakes, it's sequels, it's reboots. Here you can bring Jean Baudrillard as well. Okay? I'm not going to focus on that because I talked about it in the last video, but just to remind you of it. We've already said it's one of the most successful franchises. Assassin's Creed 3 and Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation were both brought out at the same time on different platforms, but they're both the same genre, right? And these two games work together. They want you to buy both of them. You could buy them on their own, but you didn't get the full experience unless you bought both of them. So it's a very clever way to get you to buy both games, and you needed two entirely different technologies, a PlayStation 3 and a PlayStation Vita. If you wanted to play them, that meant you had to buy a new platform as well. So very clever cross-marketing, that's synergy. Now, what do we mean when we're talking about the genre of Assassin's Creed? Assassin's Creed are third-person perspective games. In other words, you operate this avatar, your character, you play them looking over their shoulder, like an over-the-shoulder shot, right? Like this. You're not looking through their eyes as like you would in something like Call of Duty, right? They are open-world sandbox games. In the earlier ones, you were more restricted to a particular mission. You had a mission to do, it was less varied. But in the more modern ones, you've got these gigantic worlds you can explore. Entire recreations of ancient cities and things like that. So it's much more, you're free to play the game in whatever order you want. There's not just one level to do in each place. You can do missions in whatever order you want to. There are side quests and all sorts of things you can do. So there's not as open world as something like, I don't know, say the something like Skyrim, for example. But they're nonetheless third-person games. They are stealth games. Whilst there is combat, they're less about fighting, they're more about sneaking. So, they're similar. It's something that Ubisoft have often done. So, if you go back to some of the old Tom Clancy games, like Splinter Cell, for example, was in the same kind of sneaking around kind of mission. Or, you can look at something like other parkour style games, like the Uncharted games, for example, where they're third-person perspective games that are about running and jumping and climbing. That's where the parkour comes into it. So that's the kind of genre we're talking about: third-person sandbox games that are based around gameplay involving stealth, creeping about, and parkour, which is running, jumping, climbing. A lot of climbing about on rooftops. Okay? So, pause, make a note of that. Next slide. As I said, big franchise, lots of different titles over a series of years, but the gameplay is always the same. All they do is they change the location. So Assassin's Creed 3 is based in, pre-American Revolution America, in New Orleans, for Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation. It's, back when it was still a British and French colony. So these ones, Assassin's Creed 4 was pirates, for example, about the same time period, the 1700s. As they've gone on, they are based in different time periods: ancient Greece, ancient Rome, ancient Egypt, Valhalla was obviously Vikings. So 1,000 years ago. So they've been going backwards in time as the franchise goes on. So as I said, they've got different time periods. This is the thing that differentiates them. So as we said, one of the things that you want to do with franchises and genres, as Steve Neal points out, is they stay the same, but each one adds something slightly different. So the essential heart of the Assassin's Creed 3 franchise is the gameplay. It's the parkour, it's the sneaking, it's the running, it's the jumping. What they do is they change the time period. This is what gives us the unique thing for each game. If every Assassin's Creed game was exactly the same, why would you buy new ones? Other than improved graphics, for example. What they do is they change the time period and the location to give it that spice, that bit of extra difference. So, whether they're set during the Third Crusade, like the original game was, or they're set in 15th century Florence, or 18th century colonial America, or 19th century Victorian England, whatever the case is, they're all set in a distinct time period. There is a science fiction element too, as well. So they're not just got historical settings, they've got a science fiction element. Part of it's about time travel. But, there's no Assassin's Creed game set in 2020, for example. So that's what gives you the known quantity, that comfortable reassurance, as they call it. You know what you're going to get, but they spice it up by having different surface elements in terms of where and when it's set. As I said, we already know it's a big franchise. It's made a lot of money, especially Valhalla. I'm not going to dwell on that. We did it in the last video. But as you can see, this one is not Valhalla. That's the previous game that was set in ancient Greece, which is the Odyssey, obviously. Right? As I said, known properties. That's a good term. A known property is something that the audience are well aware of. It's a big deal in video games and films. So it's the reason why we have reboots, remakes, sequels. Harry Potter films, they're a known property because they started off as books. 50 Shades of Grey, or Twilight, or The Maze Runner, or I think these franchises are all based on book franchises. Obviously the perfect example are the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which of course is derived from Marvel Comics. You know, characters that have been going since the 60s. DC franchise, the DC Universe, they've been going since the 30s with characters like Batman and Superman, and Wonder Woman even since the 40s. These are known properties. That's why they can bring a new Spider-Man out every few years with a different actor as Spider-Man, because Spider-Man is the known property, not the actor. No one cares who's playing Spider-Man. Right? Same with Batman and Superman and all these others. They're known properties. In film they remake, you know, they're rebooting and remaking old franchises, whether it be Nightmare on Elm Street or Halloween or, you know, Indiana Jones soon. There's a new Indiana Jones film coming out, but they're bound to reboot that soon with a different actor as Indiana Jones. So, spin-offs, sequels, reboots, remakes. Assassin's Creed is a known property. Right? It's going long enough that it's one of the most famous of all the video game franchises. They will keep churning out Assassin's Creed games as long as people are buying Assassin's Creed games. The fact that it was a well-known property helped sell the PS Vita by having an extra, like a PS Vita exclusive version of Assassin's Creed. If you were a massive Assassin's Creed fanboy, you're going to have every version of it. And if that means buying a new console, you'll buy a new console. Even if it's the kind of thing you wouldn't normally have bought. So, pause video, make notes. Next slide. As I said though, once they had exhausted all the sales on the PS3 and the Vita, and no one was buying the PS3 version anymore, and no one was buying the Vita version anymore, then it was time to bring it out on the other platforms. Originally it was just an exclusive to the PlayStation, but eventually they brought it out on the Xbox 360 as well, but not until it had run its course on the PlayStation. So now they're maximising profit, as Hes McGelch would say, by moving it onto another platform. The word we use for that is ported. It's ported onto another platform. So you want from PS3, sorry, originally it was only available on the Vita, then they made it available on the PS3. So the PS3 version of Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation, which I've got. Then they brought it out on PC, which I've also got. Then they brought it out on the rival platform, the Xbox. Since then, they've been remastering it with better graphics and bring it out on other platforms like the Xbox One, PS4. They may even do a PS5 version, who knows. So it's about keep selling the same old reheated product over and over and over again. They will keep updating it, keep bringing it out on new platforms. You can probably get it on your phone by now, because why not? Just make as much money out of it as you can. Plus, there are new fans of the game. Maybe you've only played Valhalla, but you're now a big fan of that, so you're going to go, oh right, they've brought out a high definition remastered version of it, of the old ones. I'm going to go and get them now and play the old ones too. So you might be too young to remember when this game first came out, but you'll go and buy the original game because you're fans of the new ones. Or there's the retro gaming, market. People who are old enough to remember the older game coming out and want to buy it again for a bit of retro thrills. As I said, distribution context. As I said before, these games are now not just available on physical formats, but you can stream them. You can get them off PlayStation Network, you can get them off Steam, Xbox Live Arcade, all these kind of places as well. And of course, Uplay, as you said in the last video, you can get it from their own surface as well, because they're vertically integrated. So, that's just a little addendum, I should say, to the previous video, just to bring in the genre element as well. Okay, so just a quick one, right? Okay, as I said, all these videos are not just available on YouTube; they'll be available on the OneDrive, and obviously the PowerPoint for this is on there as well. Okay, if you've got any questions, you know where I am. See you on the next one.